now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben.
on Spoiled Rotten. And today we are doing Invincible Season 3, Episodes 1 through 3. All right. Well, we're back, man. Like it is a hard show for me to discuss because a lot of the time I'm like, did I read this or am I just thinking I read this? And again, I know what I'm looking forward to, but I just don't know like the order that it's gonna happen in.
Sure.
So it's exciting. I'm enjoying this season because at least for the Oliver stuff, they are engaging fully in the stuff that I would want to engage with Oliver.
Yeah, and that to me is I don't have any experience with the source material, so it's nice and easy for me to talk about what we're actually seeing and actually reviewing, as opposed to being like, crap, was this a part of the comic run, or was this, so that's nice and easy for me. And I always like the fact that you have a little bit of information to be like, oh, maybe not. But in this situation, I really like what they're doing with Oliver. And I like the fact that because I forget what race the bug race is that he's half. But the fact that, there is a time jump in this, but not a big one. And it's just like he is developing because of that puberty, like much, much faster. And they make a point to discuss that. And you get to see Mark's whole reaction to this whole thing, to be like, oh, I actually am being put in the position now where, like Nolan, he has to start to consider a lot of these things that are going on, and like the power, all that kind of stuff, and struggle with the idea of like, he thought he was different, but everyone keeps telling him, it's like, but you killed someone and you did this and you did this, and then he's trying to backwards find a way out of that, to be like, no, I'm not. And it's a good challenge conflict with this. And of course, obviously the actual Viltrumite threat coming at some point, looming over the head and all that kind of stuff. But at this part, I'm more convinced it's like the thing in Game of Thrones, where it's like the dead army or whatever, the North is coming and all that kind of stuff, where it's just like, okay, that's going to be a slow burn, and what's the seasonal threat this time around, which we kind of know that the voice casting of like Aaron Paul in that role is like, okay, that's probably going to be this season's. But it's so far the actual challenge between Mark and Oliver, as well as the mom having to figure out life going forward, is actually very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing we're doing it in these chunks, because I think this first three episodes kind of just got to what I thought was a pretty straight line in the comics, which is just like, no, they're good, don't worry about it. Like, she has her person now in that Paul guy.
Yep.
Like, it's not, that is, and I'm not saying like nothing bad will ever happen, but it's just like, there's no longer any like, oh no, like how are they going to move forward? It's like, no, they figured out their stride, and it's and it is him finding out like, yeah, I guess it's not right for me to say like, how dare you share this with this guy? You deserve someone that you can talk to. Mark, I don't know why I kept forgetting his name, but Mark being like, yeah, I understand, I get it. It's exactly what Eve said. She lost her husband, so like that's her person. It's not realistic to expect her to not find someone else like that again. And I like that the show fully explores that by the mom saying, yeah, I don't want to lie to you the way my husband lied to me. So this, if you want to be with me, this is my life.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe she should have warned Mark. I don't know. The show seemed to be like, you should have asked him first, but I really do feel like it's more like, maybe don't have the guy over knowing that your sons are going to come back from something. Like, maybe be like, oh, this guy is coming, I have my boyfriend over, like watch what you're doing, and then have the discussion about what you shared with him.
Yeah, because that part was a little uncomfortable and awkward for Mark and all that kind of stuff. I like what they were doing there with like, oh yeah, we were just coming back from a comic event and all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. And then I like how the awkwardness of Paul was like, don't worry, I can keep secrets. I've
That
sold a
was
house to a
amazing.
rock star. It was the best thing. It
He's like,
was
"Oh
so
Yahoo!"
good.
He's like, "Exactly." But I
Exactly.
liked before that how he just was ignoring the lies and being like, "You guys are on the news. Like that's cool, right?" Like,
Yeah.
I just like, yeah, Mark or Paul does not give a fuck about your lies. He's like, "I know who you are. Your mom
Yeah.
told me."
Yeah, and it's good. I genuinely am excited to see where that develops to and all that kind of stuff, especially because of the last season, Nolan being like, "Oh my God, I miss my wife," and what's that's gonna conflict is gonna come up, eventually when I'm assuming Nolan comes back, and deals with that. But it's just a very interesting thing to see about like who was right, who was wrong. But just the whole mental gymnastics in that one scene was so funny to me.
Yes, I think that was good. I guess we skipped all the way to episode two or
We
three,
we very much did,
but
but
so
yeah.
first episode is you're basically learning Mark is developing at a fast rate as well.
Yes.
Yes, his brother is, but it's like no, Mark is. They give the percentages. He's like off the charts, like
Mhm.
faster, stronger, all these things, and he's helping train. And I like that the show. I can't remember if this is first or second episode. Probably second episode. Yeah, it is second episode. But the show kind of drops its thesis statement for the second season, which I think they're exploring. Maybe I'm wrong about it being this, and I saw Real Rejects kind of reaffirm what I was thinking, which is it's probably a season about you can be the person who saves the world or you can be a good guy,
Mhm. Yes.
and I think that's what I like specifically about the Oliver character.
Hmm.
And what I think is important about engaging in the superhero stories in general. I feel like we kind of hinted at it in X-Men '97 when Rogue was like, "No, I'm gonna kill this guy because he's a bad guy," and I said during that episode like, "Yeah, that was showing you the people who want to be effective or people who want to look good,"
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that in like a one way is the very clear good way to go.
Hmm.
It is interesting because it's complicated.
Yes.
Um, and I like that. Yes, Mark has this blood in his ledger, like the red in his ledger, because he killed Angstrom Levy, or he thinks he did, based
Hmm.
on that post credit of season of episode 3.
Hmm.
And you people are like, look, you're not different. You have killed too, and I like again, this is episode 2. I'm pretty sure what the Walton Goggins character, what Cecil is saying when
Hmm.
he's just like, but you don't listen. Like you have a very specific way you think things should go, and you do not make room for anyone else's point of view.
Hmm.
And he's basically explaining like you've got this fascist way about you,
Hmm.
and like that's all well and good that right now you think you're saving people, but realistically, if you're not willing to listen to the people you say you're trying to save, then how are you better?
Yeah.
Because you can kill and you have
Hmm.
killed when you
Yes.
thought it was okay.
And it's such an interesting thing, right? Because and not that the show is basically exploring this, but villains are the heroes of their own story. It's like to bring these points up to Mark to be like, hey, yeah, there's really not much different. You're just aligned with what we have going on right now. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
lucky in that regard, but the reality here is that you're bending over backwards to justify that you're a good guy at the end of the day, but he like you just said, he rigidly has this expectation for how things should go, and he's not willing to listen to anyone about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a problem, and this is how like heroes become villains. And really, there's I think one of the biggest differences between heroes and villains is the fact that heroes are willing to look at and listen to everyone else's perspective and opinion, as opposed to villains are just not, right? They're both doing the same thing at the end of the day. They're in many cases, not all of them, but Captain America kills people. It's,
I mean, again, that
yeah.
was part of what I didn't really understand about that Hawkeye show, where they're like, he killed people. I'm like, literally all of them have killed people.
Yes.
And if you want, like, I get that sometimes it's like it's an alien, but
Mhm.
the first Avengers movie is him literally killing people.
Yeah.
Like one of the big images from that is him with his gun out shooting just regular people. And by the time you get to Avengers, yeah, he's killing the people like on the Avengers helicarrier.
Mhm.
Like those are humans he's killing.
Yeah.
He's
There's no way
shooting.
around that,
So
for
like
sure.
I say that to say I am not necessarily on the side of just because you've killed means you're a bad person.
Yep.
Um, I think, obviously, if you make this real life, there's very clear instances where, like, if someone has to kill to get out of an experience where they're being held hostage or
Mhm.
they're like, there's instances where, and I'm not saying everyone has to feel this way, where I'm like, oh, they killed someone to get away or to save a life, like someone's life with someone they care about, then like
Mhm.
I'm not as well. You still are a terrible person because you did that,
Yeah.
and I don't think that everyone has to feel that way, but that is my frame of mind going into these types of shows and
Mhm.
real life as well.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, because these are the difficult conversations that you and I are both willing to have and look at in these scenarios, because the reality is, like, people are turning a blind eye when people go like violence is never the answer. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's a very privileged perspective that you have on the
I
world
hate
and
when
very
people say violence
naive.
is never the answer.
It's the biggest dumbass thing of all time to say, is that violence is never the answer. I'm like, really? Really? Look at our human history. Violence has been the answer for the majority of things that have happened, right? And it's just like, we're not terrorizing people, but if you need to defend yourself, violence is definitely the answer. What are we talking about here?
Yeah,
If a
and
kid's getting bullied,
violence doesn't have to be like I punch you. Like
yeah,
violence can be the civil unrest of when you see people protesting in the
yep,
streets and like making people feel uncomfortable that way.
hmm,
And yeah, and sometimes it does mean that you need to literally fight for your life in that sense.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the violence is never the answer.
No,
But
it's
that
the
doesn't
most
mean that I think
naive
you should
thing.
use violence in every situation. I just acknowledge that you can't live your life thinking violence will never be the answer.
Yeah. It is often the answer for a lot of different things. And it's just like, people that say violence is not the answer. I'm like, that's a nice sheltered life that you've got, that you can hold that opinion. But the reality is that violence is a legitimate answer for a lot of different things, and it's oftentimes what we go towards. It's just, if someone says violence is not the answer, I'm like, cool, it's nice that you're dismissing the reality of a lot of lived experiences, right?
Hmm.
It just is like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Um. But yeah, I think is it the it is it the first episode where the team splits up, or
I'd like to say it's the second one,
it's the second
because
one? So the first
that's,
one
yeah.
is just him saving them and realizing that Cecil's still working with DA Sinclair and Darkwing.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the first episode. Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, that's where we got seismic whatever guy
Doc
doing.
Seismic
Yeah.
is back and he's better than ever. And he captured every single superhero in the United States.
Except for
Uh,
Adam Eve and, of course,
and
Invincible.
Invincible, who
Yeah.
I think historically are the people to beat him, but they
Mhm.
couldn't beat him this time. And so Cecil had to send in
Mhm.
uh, the are they called reanimators? I can't remember what they're called.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's the D.A. Sinclair robot slash human things that he made
Mhm.
in the first time you met him. Um, I noticed the show has smartly not used Ezra Miller again by just not having him on screen.
Yeah.
Um, and then Darkwing. And again, I'm just kind of like, it's important that he's like this, but I'm just like, I feel a bit more on Mark's side with the whole I can't believe you're working with DA Sinclair thing and
Mhm.
using these things.
Mhm.
The Darkwing thing, I'm like, could you not just talk to him? You seem to just be off of him no matter what. Like this,
Mhm.
it seems weirdly like, no, fuck that guy. And
Yeah.
I don't really understand it, but I understand that it is important for to highlight what Cecil's saying about Mark, that he's not willing to. And so yeah, that's the first episode, and also that he confesses his feelings to Eve
Yeah.
and messes it up,
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
which um I like that the show was like, don't tell her, but I was like, nah, he's got to tell her. Like, this doesn't work if he's lying.
Yeah.
I do, but I did like this. Just like, yeah, there is such a thing as too much honesty, because the way he set up what he set up did make it seem like, well, yeah, I'm only asking you out because I feel bad about the like loser you that said she was sad I didn't ask you out.
Mhm.
What he could have just said, it it prompted me to realize I was putting you in a situation and myself in a situation that didn't make sense, and now I
Mhm.
want to say how I feel. He could have very easily been like, "No, this is how I feel." That
Mhm.
situation just prompted me to share it with you.
Yeah.
But instead, he was kind of like, "I don't know, wait, no, you look so sad," and I was like, "Oh, fair enough, you're a
Mhm.
kid." But, but I was just like, "I don't know, there's just an easier way for you to share your truth here."
Yeah. Yeah. To me, this is one of those situations where I'm like, oh man, you really needed to talk to your mom and get your mom's perspective on this
Hmm.
to really figure it out. Because I'm sure your mom would have really, really set you straight to be like, here's how you should approach it. I like that he talks to his friends about it and all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. But and I do agree, like there sometimes can be too much truth where you're just being mean,
Yeah,
and in this situation, it does feel like that. But I think that's the great thing about Mark is that we're trying to see him figure it out by himself. And obviously he can't do that successfully, and that's why I'm like, hey, yeah, go talk to your mom about this. Like, she's the emotional core of what you
and
had going on before, anyways. Like,
what Eve was saying, which is like,
mhm.
the people you think depend on you, we're here for you to depend on us too. So
Yeah.
like, obviously he can't depend on Eve in that moment, but
Mhm.
he has options in terms of who he can talk to.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do like that all of that is explored. But yeah, it was weird because I was like, can't they just beat this guy? But the show was very clearly like, no, he will kill them. They need
Mhm.
help. Um, just because I'm like, the immortal feels like someone who would definitely be able to just beat him.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, your Simu Liu was in it as Multi-Paul, and
Mhm.
your boy Blue Beetle was the other guys.
That's right.
It's weird because again, in the comics, I felt like they legitimately took him on a uh like a time travel mission.
Mhm.
I didn't remember it just staying put like that, but whatever. Maybe they'll do that later. But I thought it was a very interesting thing they did that would have been better on TV than in the comics. And I liked it in the comics what they did. I'm not saying just in case they do
Mhm.
it, but I was like, oh yeah, like that's an interesting way of dealing with time travelers.
Mhm.
So we'll see, because they didn't get caught. He still has to catch them, but in the comics, that's not really how it works.
Right.
It's like he's on a date and they approach him.
Right.
So we'll see.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so that was fun that they kind of were like, look at all the people we got this season in the first little bit
Yeah.
without Aaron Paul or what's his name, Jonathan Banks.
Yes.
Um, they haven't showed up yet, but yeah, I liked it, and I do like the multi-pole thing, which is like, I'm gonna kill you. And then
Mhm.
even after when Rex Blood was like, you almost killed me for nothing, he's like, I've killed for less. Like, I
Yeah.
thought you killed my sister, so yeah, I was gonna kill you. I don't
Yeah.
feel bad about that.
Mhm.
I really liked how like resolute he was. Like, he's like, nah, like, this was the right move.
Mhm.
Fuck you.
And I like that when Duplicate came back, it was like this whole thing of like everyone was shocked and all this kind of stuff, and she was just like, I just needed some time.
Hmm.
Um, but it was genuinely like one of those things where I'm like, oh man, I can see things from both sides of being like, yeah, why did you let your friends believe that you were dead for such a long time and all that kind of stuff? Because
Hmm.
you could have just been like, yeah, I need a break from this for a while. I need to figure out what's going on with um the Infinity guy,
Immortal.
Immortal, and it was. it's very, very interesting because to some degree, I think what Duplicate is doing is so reflective of a lot of people post-pandemic is the idea of like, yeah, I just need to shut off for a while and all this kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
then people that are like, a little bit more like the team, like the Guardians of the Globe, are just like, yeah, you could have let us know that you're okay instead of just disappearing and all that kind of stuff, which I'm guilty for in a lot of situations too. I think these are very, very interesting things because there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, do this, do this, do this, and then expect a community when they get back, and no, they've moved on, and all that kind of stuff. But it's just really cool how they're exploring all these different angles,
Hmm.
and everything like that.
No, I like that the show is not. Well, I hope people realize they're not giving like easy answers. They're showing you like
Yes.
the problem. So like, yeah, that's at the crux of it. The whole like, not that that is exploring that, but at the crux of it, what I think they're trying to do is with the whole, do you want to be someone who saves the world or do you want to be the good guy? Is
Mm-hmm.
um obviously said in second episode, and
Mm-hmm.
you show where Mark is like, no, I'm not going to work with bad guys. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and Cecil's like, they're rehabilitated. I mean, I think he's basically like brainwashed, but still,
Yeah.
they're different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then obviously we get his backstory, which I did like in the comics, and I'm kind of glad that maybe it's just how slowly I read. It felt like it went on a long time in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
This felt nice and truncated,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it felt like they were really driving home. Like, yeah, Cecil had the same issue of like, no, I don't want to work with these bad guys, and he just killed them. Actually, he
Yeah.
shot them. Um, but I like that his boss, played by Bokeem Woodbine, I don't remember what the character's name is, but
Mm-hmm.
Bokeem Woodbine just be like, do you understand? Like, we're saving lives here. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
is like these people will help us get that job done.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to stand on principle, or do you want to actually be effective
Yeah.
and get things done?
All right, and these are good discussions, right? Because at the end of the day, this is like that whole like full philosophical or moral question of like if you have this train and then the multiple like five people and then one person on the track and you can divert, like what do you do in this situation? Because your hands are going to get dirty in one way or shape or form.
And
Um,
yeah, I agree, but I also am like, in both cases, Mark and Cecil don't actually talk to the people they think are the bad guys.
yes,
They're just like, no, I've made my decision, which I think is important
yeah,
because that is part of, living with other people
mhm,
is, yeah, they can transgress, and you can have someone like Harvey Weinstein who's like, I will never change. I don't care.
right,
And you're like, yeah, this person needs to be taken away. I'm not saying kill him. I'm saying that person needs to be put away and
yeah,
removed from society for as long as it takes for them to change. Or if they don't change, then they're going to be stuck
sure,
away from society.
yeah,
Uh, you or a Roseanne who's not in jail but consistently wants to double down on being a hateful person.
yeah,
These are people that are like, all right, like you transgress, someone said something to it, and you were like, nope, I don't care. I'm just gonna get angrier about it.
mhm,
That's different than if you someone transgresses and then you're like, hey man, like that's fucked up.
yeah,
And I'm not saying people have to forgive these two examples I'm talking about. That's on you if you don't. But I think, especially around the time Kobe Bryant died, people are like, why is everyone feeling so bad about this? And it's like, on paper, he looks like someone who took the feedback and worked on himself and
yes,
tried to make amends. And
mhm,
again, I don't mean that to say so you should forgive him, but
mhm,
that was an example of someone being like, I am going to try to do better.
yeah,
Uh, Mike Tyson is another person I look at where I'm like, it seems like even when I see him on podcasts and his conversations, he's kind of lost it a bit. But there was a period
yes,
where like I saw him trying to actually call out people that were being homophobic, and
yep,
it seems like he's done the work to be less ill at ease.
mhm,
And again, don't forgive him if you don't want to. That's what I'm talking about. But I'm trying to give examples of people who seem like, and I'm trying to use black people instead of my go-to of James Gunn.
yeah,
But yeah, like there's people that transgressed, and then you're like, okay, like up to you if you think that you can't come back from that, but
Mhm.
they're showing signs of wanting to do better
Yes.
and trying to work on that. And I think that is also part of saving the world, because that is being like, okay, you actually want to do the right thing, let me work with you and do that. And that's obviously going to be a through line with Oliver, like,
Hmm.
how do you deal with this? And obviously it's different to him because he's like, well, that's family, but
Hmm.
you need to be able to extend that to other people because, as I said, that's part of living in the world with people. And
Yeah.
so I just think it's an interesting thing to tackle in the show.
It's very interesting because it's not a straightforward, easy thing, right?
No.
I think um as time has gone on over the past 20 years, it's been easier and easier and easier to expect perfection out of people. But then I, to me, I'm like, that's not realistic ever to expect perfection out of anyone. But what we can expect is, okay, does this person lean into those hard conversations? Does this person actually care enough to change their behaviors? Because, I mean, foundationally, no one can be perfect.
No.
And the idea of perfect is constantly shifting as well. So what we're looking at here is, why do we have less tolerance now than ever before, when we should be able to, like in the examples that you described, like Kobe and Tyson and all that kind of stuff, where yes, they've definitely had some problematic pasts, but how are they readjusting going forward? You know, like, are they having these difficult conversations? Or are they doubling down like Roseanne's and all those other figures that are just like, nope, I'm sticking true to my guns and all this kind of stuff, and I don't care, and but I'm still going to complain when I do have any kind of consequence laid upon me. I'm just like,
Hmm.
what are we doing here? So I respect someone way more that's made a mistake, that is willing to work on themselves and for the betterment of themselves and all that kind of stuff, right? Because not everyone has those abilities to be in a privileged situation where they can grow up with someone that's guiding them perfectly. You know, there's
Hmm.
multiple reasons for that. And it's just, it's challenging too, because then especially when we bring in the idea of multiculturalism and how the world has become a smaller place because of the globalization of everything. It's just like, now we have to compete with different cultures and what their beliefs are and their systems and all that kind of stuff, and then look at that, and recognize that, you know, to demand perfection out of people is really just, it's just the most intolerant thing. And that's what Mark is doing in this
Hmm.
situation. He's being very intolerant of, like, okay, uh fuck this guy for whatever reason, you can't vocalize it, and it's just, you got to be able to believe in the process of rehabilitation, because otherwise, like, yeah, you just might as well just kill them if that's the case.
Exactly.
If you
Yeah.
don't think that they can actually change, then just straight up kill them and like accept the fact
Which
that,
is
you know.
what I like about Oliver's thing. Again, I mean,
Yes.
we're not going to go in any order, but in
Hmm.
episode 3, Oliver says it out loud, like, "What? Look at what we're capable of doing. Why would we not use that to stop the bad guys from continuing to hurt people?"
Yep.
Like, if your whole thing is, I'm angry that this person's still around, and again, I'm not saying this to be like, yeah, so just kill them. That's not how I personally feel. It is an interesting, because that is the dilemma you're faced with when watching this show, and
Correct.
so it is interesting to watch characters work through it,
Yep.
um, and be called in, if you want to call it that, instead of called out
Hmm.
for um, looking at it a certain way, but not considering the other part. And yeah, so Oliver, it's what I like throughout the comics is
Hmm.
he's always going to have that tension with Mark, because he's like, dude, what are we doing here?
Yep.
And this is something Real Rejects pointed out that I didn't notice before, but it's obviously um, Mark switching to the suit he does in my background, the black and
Hmm.
blue. Obviously, it's very Nightwing coded,
Yep.
and uh, Kid Omni Man is very just regular Robin coded, but
Yep.
Jason Todd code in particular, and I think both of us love the Red Hood animated movie,
I
where
was gonna bring
that
that
is
up. Yeah.
Jason Todd's thing of like, the fuck are we doing here? Like,
Yeah.
and also, obviously, Oliver hasn't got here yet, but he's like, also, that guy killed me, so why are you letting him live?
Yeah.
And why are we letting the Muller twins live? Because I think, yeah, Debbie says, you know, other the people you think are less than still have people who care about them. He's like, no, not the Mauler twins. And I was like, it's
Yeah.
true. They don't.
They don't.
It's just them. It's
Yeah,
just,
that wasn't the best.
he's like, so I got rid of both of
argument,
them. Now, no,
for
no,
sure.
no, neither of them have to be upset.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I just think it is interesting to actually engage with that stuff.
Yes.
I don't think that it means that you have to pick a side and be like, no, this is 100% the way to live your life.
Yeah, because I think there are exceptions to the rule. I'm so glad, and if you weren't going to do it, I was going to do it. The Red Hood discussion about like, yeah, in that scenario with Jason Todd and all that kind of stuff, it's just like the discussion being like, if you're not going to kill the Joker, you really have to accept the fact that you're enabling what he's doing to a degree and all
that
this
blood
kind of
is on
stuff,
your
right?
hands too.
It's exactly, and it's such a good philosophical discussion because it's not clear cut. And that's what I like about this show is that we're actually leaning into it versus like, unfortunately, in the Batman thing, it kind of doesn't dive into it as much as I'd like it to. Because Batman ultimately doesn't really change like that philosophy at the end of the day, which is why like as flawed as it is from what Snyder did, it's just like he actually had that internal discussion within his mind, made a decision. Now, I don't appreciate the fact that from a Snyder standpoint, I'm like,
but
yeah,
did
you
make
needed
a decision.
He did make no.
Said,
I agree with that.
No,
it's
not
just,
Snyder. I'm talking about in that movie. He's saying he's very vulnerable, and he says, "I can't do that because then." And it's not I'm no better than them. It is like, where would I stop after that? Like, yeah, sure. I kill him, I'm gonna keep killing, and that's his rule. So like, that's him being like, this is the line I just don't cross. That is the cross I bear. That like, yeah, I know these people are gonna kill people, and I'm just gonna have to keep hoping that this is the time that it stops. And I've always said this is what I liked about the Ryan Coogler version of Black Panther is that he made a choice that ultimately changed life for the people around him, as opposed to just, oh, I put the bad guy in jail.
Yep.
I think that it was very interesting that he was like, oh yeah, okay, what we're doing is wrong, and we are creating villains. We need to open ourselves up to the world, and he went on that fact-finding mission versus a Batman where you're like, yeah, like you're just not that they're similar in other ways, but like that's the Daredevil thing too, of like, yeah, I do these things that go against my religion, but like this is what I do, and this is the cross I bear. So I think both Snyder and the Red Hood versions make a decision. I find the vulnerability in the decision that the Red Hood Batman makes more compelling.
Sure. I mean, that is the ultimate sticking point, but to really hear Jason Todd's discussion there, in his perspective, his pain, to be like, I thought that would have crossed the line for you, that I would have been the exception kind of deal, is just like, yeah, that is brutal. It's every aspect of that is brutal, and it's an interesting thing that I think that this show, because of the nature of this show, is leaning into these discussions a lot better than what I saw in the Red Hood movie and all that kind of stuff, right? Not to say that it's not bad, because I do ultimately like where Batman proceeds. It's like, yeah, like where would I stop if I made that one exception? Because that is the reality, is like,
it's like, this is what holds me together. Like I do that, and then I cease to be myself.
Yeah. And like, I can appreciate Batman's perspective on that. 100% I can. It's just, I think, and Star Wars does this in episode 3, where Palpatine goes to Anakin and he's like, hey, good or evil is a matter of opinion. And I'm like, yeah, that's never been more true ever. That good or evil is a matter of opinion. It ultimately is. And it's in this show, it just boils it down to, do you want to save the world, or do you want to look a certain way? And those things are both very, very true. You can continue doing the convenient thing knowing that it's going to hurt society, or you can bear your own cross to be like, I have to make a difficult decision right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's so cool that Mark gets to explore that with Oliver. and Oliver having as much influence from Nolan as he already does, is exploring those kind of ideals and what the mother is doing to kind of really
She's
teach
trying to
that
remind
out of
him,
him.
like, yeah, you can't look at it like only people who are as strong as you
Yeah.
deserve your. Um, it's. I don't think the show is actively trying to do it, but that, like, when you look at how capitalism destroys things, of like making
Mhm.
it so that the only people with worth are people who can contribute their labor.
Yep.
Um, she's trying to get him to move away from that type of thinking of
Hmm.
like, yeah, it's not just about like, because I think he says like, yeah, people kill them all the time, kill each other all the time, and they don't even have powers like us, so who the
Yep.
fuck cares? And she's like, yeah, like, you can, do you really feel that way? He's like, yeah, kind of. She's like,
Yeah.
yeah, then no, you can't keep going that way, which I like. I think Debbie always comes in with the right way of looking at things
Yeah.
so
Because
far.
at the end of the day, Debbie reminds us that empathy is taught more than anything else. Is just
Yeah.
like, especially when you look at the behavior of children, it's borderline psychopathic until you have a good parent figure and all that kind of stuff that really is like, hey, let's teach this kid empathy. Let's teach them that there matters how they affect other people. And then it's quite clear when they don't have those kind of situations. And that's what I mean by like, okay, are we expecting perfection out of people that really we're not even taking the context to which they were raised and all that kind of like if you look at Tyson and how he was raised and all this kind of stuff, it's just like there's got to be a lot of empathy towards that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
talking about
and
Mike Tyson, I was like, wait,
Mike Tyson, yeah,
yeah,
Mike Tyson,
yeah, yeah.
and the idea of like he didn't have a father figure growing up. He had a fight promoter, and that fight promoter was just like, do this constantly. So it's just like, how do you? And then the world is like, you're the best, you're the best. You're like, how do you figure out that empathy through that situation? So the fact that Tyson's done what he's done, but he's actively working against these kind of things and reprogramming himself and all that kind of stuff is something to be like, yeah, okay, that's really damned impressive, especially from where you came from. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I think that it's on um, Mark to recognize that he's not in the position to do that right now for Oliver. Like, he
Yes.
does need to have Debbie be more a part of it, because
Hmm.
while we could both agree, like, there's something off about Oliver, the way he's lying almost immediately. Like, what? There was a
Yeah.
mistake. I didn't mean to do that. You're like, I mean, you did. You
Yeah.
meant to kill them, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and he keeps lying. He still, I think that came from a very clear thing of him being like, I thought they were going to kill my brother. I
Yeah.
don't want them to hurt anyone ever again.
Yeah.
Um, so to completely ignore that and chastise him just for like, oh, you should have left, you should have left, is that whole like refusing to teach empathy. Like, that was a
Yep.
moment to at least show empathy
Yep.
and be like, and I know he says that, but it's mostly lip service. It doesn't feel like he's actually acknowledging what that might have done to a kid
Yeah.
to see their
Absolutely.
family member in peril like that.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end, this is the reality of the situation. Mark did the exact same thing. He's just like your mother was getting
Yeah,
hurt,
you
and
killed
you
the guy
did
who
the
hurt Mark.
exact same thing. So it's like to me, I'm like, oh, this is Mark projecting for sure. It is, and all that kind of stuff. And he's expecting more out of this kid. You know, which to be fair, I think like everyone expects more from people around them than they do from
Well,
themselves.
specifically, people expect too much from kids.
Yes.
Everyone's always like, oh my god, like, that kid was having a tantrum at the restaurant. It's like, yeah, man, like, they
Yeah,
didn't
they're
ask to be
kids.
here, one, and two,
Yeah.
like, they literally do not have the brain function to regulate themselves at that
Exactly.
age.
Yeah.
So expecting them to regulate themselves when a lot of adults don't know how to do that is ridiculously unfair.
It
and
is
it,
unfair.
and that
Yeah.
is, I obviously, as a parent, that's what I see in
Hmm.
this relationship with Oliver, because I read it before I
Hmm.
was a parent, but like, seeing that with Mark and Oliver, because he's very clearly being put into the dad role with them going out to play catch and everything.
Yep.
um the idea that 100% he is projecting, because his whole thing is, oh, hopefully people don't see me as my dad. And then he's got this kid being like, I'm Kid Omni-Man. And he's like, no, please don't do that. Please don't do that. We don't want to be associated with Dad at all.
Mhm.
And he gets so hung up on that and forgetting he is talking to a child.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It is exactly that. I mean, uh, I see all these people online posting about like kids should not be allowed on flights because this, no, they should not be allowed in business. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, man?
They need to be in those situations so they know how to act
Yeah,
when they are older. Like, yeah,
it's
I
just
don't ever like
ridiculous.
engage in those online things, but I'm like, okay,
No, that's definitely a waste of time. But
yeah, I'm just like, all right, sure.
I bring it up as like a more grounded level of being like, yeah, this is how ridiculous it can be. People do expect perfection out of kids when there's no empathy being put towards that thought. I'm like, how do you expect a kid to be super regulated when most adults aren't?
Mhm.
Like, what are we doing here? Kind of deal. Like, it's silly. It's absolutely silly.
Yeah, especially for all the pressure that people get put into to have kids.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, but yeah, I think that the third episode I really thought was a strong way to end that group of three because it
Yes.
starts with the those villains and they try to rob the bank and then
Hmm.
they get beat by Bulletproof and then they're like, okay, let's try just the honest way of life. And then
Hmm.
they're not allowed because of their powers and obviously like
Hmm.
things get messed up. Then they go back and you see that maybe he would have had a change of heart. Like maybe that experience made him be like, I don't know if we should be doing this, but runs right into Invincible's fist and then like, well, that's done. Now they have to defend themselves as the good guy comes to stop them.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I'm not saying they're not bad guys for stealing money, but when you steal money from a bank, it's like they're insured for that. But yeah,
Yeah.
um, it was just I thought that was an interesting way to start because obviously it all comes full circle of like Invincible looks at that like fuck these guys, they're the bad
Yeah.
guys. But as Debbie pointed out, she was like, I mean, but those people have lives. They have people who care about them,
Hmm.
and he could have done the your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man thing of like, dudes, like you keep doing this. What can be done so that you don't need to keep robbing banks?
Yeah.
Like, what is your deal?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like even seeing the visuals of like the second time around, like they didn't steal more than they needed. They really
Exactly.
just took what they needed. And it's very clear too that they were like, we're not going to hurt anyone.
Hmm.
We're not going to do this. We're just here to do this one thing and then get out and all this kind of stuff and set ourselves up and all that. And I love the fact that that episode through a very effective visual storytelling was able to be like they tried to do it the way that society says
Yeah.
that we should be doing it, and look how many L's they keep getting even though they're doing it properly. It's just, and this is I think the issue with highlighting the capitalism thing again is just
Hmm.
like, yeah, especially nowadays too, there's more and more people living in poverty because everyone's getting left behind because of the craziness that is corporate greed, and in all those kind of different things, right? So it's just how do we expect to live to this standard when those opportunities don't actually exist and that we're actively being screwed over
Hmm.
in these situations? Like, it's such a great opening to that episode. It's such a strong, it's such strong visual storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no dialogue, so yeah,
Mhm.
you are just left with the music and sticking with the visuals, which you said are very strong. I agree.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, yeah, I really like that, and I think we've already talked about like what the end result of that episode is, which is Oliver kills, and they're kind of like, "Hey, how dare you?" And he's like, well, "What are we doing here?" So
Yeah.
I like that, and um, but episode two, why I wanted to talk about the split of the team because basically it's revealed after you see Cecil's backstory.
Hmm.
It's revealed that he put something in Mark's head and
Yep.
he can use it to drop him whenever he wants.
Hmm.
and I like the team sees that, and I feel I can't remember what her name is, but it's like the monster girl, the girl that can turn into a monster. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Like, excuse me?
Hmm.
I didn't know which way I was swayed until I saw this, and now I'm like, oh no, we cannot work for this guy
Hmm.
anymore. Um, I really liked that fight. I liked that he came there and
Hmm.
he's like, he's trying to kill me, and he's like, no, I'm not. Don't worry about it. This doesn't concern you. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
And then one by one, like whoever's going to leave is kind of like, wait a minute. Why
Yeah.
would you be doing this to one of us? Like,
Hmm.
you obviously could do that. If you're doing it to him, you're definitely doing it to us.
Yeah.
And um, just obviously immortal makes sense. He's like the old white guy being like, no, this is a privilege to be here. This is
Yeah.
an honor to be here. So I'm
Hmm.
not leaving. Obviously, Duplicate's not leaving.
No.
Um, the only person that I was like, I mean, honestly, good for you. You make a good point. Was the Martian guy being like, I mean, he really let me slide after all the shit I did on Mars. So, like,
Yeah.
ending on and my car is and my bed is a race car was a joke. But
That was good. That was
the
fun.
initial thing of like, I don't know, man, he's been good to me. I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, good. You stay. I don't really think you're that helpful anyway. Yeah, you can stay with them too.
Yeah.
But I did like that the Monster Girl, Bulletproof, and Rexplode were like, out. We're out.
Yeah. We're
And
fucking done with this.
Shrinking Ray was like, you already know where I'm going. Like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much about Robot, but yeah, he also went with the people I think made the right choice, which was to leave that
Yeah.
group. But yeah, I'm gonna be very quiet about Robot until the end of the season.
Sure. Sure. Well, I mean, I'm curious about what happens with that, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, then you I forget who this character is, but
Oh, Samson stayed. I forgot about Samson.
oh, okay, yeah, that he's like, well, I can't affect change from the outside.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
that makes sense that it was the older black guy that said
yeah,
that.
it's all these different
I'll do it
perspectives.
from the inside. No, you
Yeah.
won't. No,
And
you
then
won't.
nope, that's what a lot of black cops say too, is look how
No,
that
that's not gonna
happens.
work for you. But he
Yeah.
also is the one that asked Robot, like, "Hey, like, interesting that you made this choice." And he's like, "Was it for Monster?" I was like, "Yes."
Yes, of course it was.
Also, I need Mark on my side, and I was like, "Yep, got it." I won't say anything else, but I just like, "Wow, you really were a cool motherfucker."
Yeah. It's these are all just like really just very interesting discussions that the show is just giving us on top of very good visuals.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
and I really like the how Rexplode is maturing. Like he keeps trying to do
yeah,
like dick jokes, and then he's like, "No, you know what? That's
that's
the
the
old me."
old me.
And I'm like, "Good for you, man."
Yeah.
The only thing I remember from the comics is him being like, "You should just be with Eve. This is stupid."
Mhm.
Like you're both my friends. I think that's like direct dialogue of him just being like, "You're both my friends. I would like you both to be happy."
Yeah.
I like that stuff. I don't remember the
very
whole.
much like that. Yeah.
I'm trying to change stuff. Like I think he just was naturally changing. I don't think
Yeah.
he ever called attention to it, but
Mhm.
I like it in the show. Obviously, it can't. It's I like that it's not just beat for beat, or it doesn't feel beat for beat.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like knowing that too, because I think we've had this discussion multiple times, but what's the point of having something that's exactly the same
Yeah, exactly.
as what already exists? Like, take some creative liberties with this. Tell us a
It's also a different
story
medium,
that's
so like
different.
you have to tell stories differently in that different medium.
Absolutely. So it's just like
Um,
change a little bit of the source material. Just stay true to the core
yeah.
concept of what you're doing.
What was at the heart of what made this good, and keep
Mhm.
that, and you can change other things, and it'll still be interesting. Um, yeah. Back to the Eve and Amber and Mark of it all.
Mhm.
This is what I was trying not to like shine a light on, but like I think you already knew, but it was just like, yeah, they're gonna just stay broken up. The Mark and Amber.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I like that the show puts it into the right words of like, you guys are just not from this world, so it makes sense that you would be together.
Mhm.
But I like, because I think they gave Amber a bit more than the comics in the sense of like her front loading what she was saying, being about like, I understand why you two guys got together.
Mhm.
My memory, again, it's not a great memory at this point. My memory was she was accepting, but also kind of like, yeah, and I found someone else, which is how that scene plays out, but it
Mhm.
felt a bit more of Amber actually acknowledging what she liked about not being in a relationship with Mark, and
Mhm.
not just, oh, I found someone else, so it's better now.
Mhm. Yeah.
I like that that was just like the cherry on top was
Mhm.
I was able to find someone better for me,
Mhm.
because I'm not with him anymore.
Mhm.
And that she very specifically said, I always wondered if you would get together after we broke up,
Yeah.
as opposed to just, oh, I always knew you were going to try and get with him. I just liked the way that was worded.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't. It
It wasn't
felt.
accusatory or anything.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Those are the words I'm looking for. It was a great scene between the both of them and all that kind of stuff. Um, and yeah, it's interesting because I want to see how this relationship with Mark and Adam Eve really develops because of the fact that it's just like, okay, well, he is doing the honest thing. He has a different level of understanding. He doesn't have to gaslight and lie and all this kind of stuff. And because that was a huge problem with what Mark was doing and all that kind of, and it was just it's a very interesting thing to see this develop the way it's going right now.
Hmm.
I like it.
Yeah, and I do like, as I said, ultimately I like that he said, remember your older self, and she was sad. I like that that was out in the open, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that they played that over 3 episodes of her coming to
Mhm.
terms with that, as opposed to him not saying it, because I do think it's important for him to not. And I think they showed that with his mom as well, Debbie, being like, I'm not going to lie to this person that I want a real relationship with, so
Yeah.
that he's not going to lie to Eve, because he already saw what that did with Amber.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that was good. And uh, I don't know what else happens in the episodes concerning those 3 characters. I think that's pretty much it.
I think that's pretty much it.
I think
For now,
his
anyways,
yeah,
obviously.
is the guy's name Rick, but the guy that did get turned into the robot thing, but then like say his gay best friend's boyfriend,
Yeah.
is that
Don't
guy's name
know.
Rick? Let me look it up. Um, because I like that they were, yeah, Will's boyfriend. Hopefully it's Rick. I'm not gonna. Of course, it's gonna take forever for me to find this guy's name.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's Rick,
Hmm.
played by Luke McFarlane. I I like that they showed his reaction to finding out that DA Sinclair is not in jail,
Hmm.
and how he's kind of like tweaking. Because I don't know like what happens with him. I kind of was like, yeah, he almost gets turned, and then he doesn't. That's
Hmm.
good. So the fact that he's still here, I'm like, I don't remember anything that happens with him, so that'll be interesting. But I like that he
Hmm.
was just. It's why I was like, yeah, I get why Mark is mad about the DA Sinclair stuff.
Yeah.
He's got a constant reminder with his friends of like the harm that that guy did,
Hmm.
um, and that they're still letting that character who was directly harmed by him have not a say, but an opinion on how things are developing. You
Hmm.
get to see how it continues to affect him. I thought that was good. The show is doing a good job of acknowledging that there are different characters, and you don't have to just go to the same well for interesting story beats.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I like is that at the core of it, and I think this is true for a lot of superhero stuff, is that at the end of the day, it's interesting watching these people maintain their humanity as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to going the Nolan Omni Man route where it's just like, yeah, we're gods. Like these people are playthings. She's my pet kind of perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just like that's such a struggle for Mark, obviously, and we're seeing that unfold. And this is part of it is just having these people that are in their lives that mean a lot that aren't super powered and you know that aspect of everything because a lot of that is driven by the fact that I'm like yeah I get where he's coming from. I get what is and to see actual Rick's reaction to is it's pretty cool. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool stuff for sure. Yeah.
It's good stuff. I forgot there was something I wanted to mention. I don't remember right now. I just
I
got
will
too
quickly
excited.
say that I love how everyone's like, yeah, that's Invincible. All of a sudden, like knocking him down because the colors are different in this suit, and it's like it's a knockoff
Did
version.
they
I'm like,
not?
that's so
Did they not
funny.
see Oliver? Because I would just be like automatically be like that must be Invincible.
Yeah, like
But
I
to
would
me,
have
I would
thought
be like,
that.
oh, Invincible changed his costume, and now he's got an Invincible boy with him.
Yeah, because like everything else with Invincible is the exact same. It's
Yeah,
just
he
that
doesn't
I'm
look
like,
younger.
he
Like,
doesn't. Yeah.
so it's just like, oh, interesting. I don't remember that beat from the comics. It probably was there, but it
Mhm.
just didn't stick with me because it was one thing that I was like, is that what you would call him? He doesn't look younger.
No.
One and two, everyone knows who Invincible is at this point. So
Yeah.
like, why would you be like, it's Invincible? We have no idea who this is.
Yeah, and especially because
And
there
maybe they
is a
didn't
kid
see
right
Oliver.
next to him.
Maybe they didn't see
Yeah,
Oliver. I don't know, but it just felt like
probably.
surely you would be like, it's Oliver is Invincible.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense to me, but I think it's funny because it's just like, yeah, I guess the branding did change a little bit, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden we're doing this like it's like the Night Monkey thing. It's just like, well, that's they're doing
That makes
Spider-Man things. It
that
makes a
made more
little bit
sense to
more
me because it's
sense.
like he's in a different continent, and
Yeah,
so you wouldn't immediately think, "Oh, that's Spider Man." You would think,
sure.
"Oh, okay, I guess that's Night Monkey." That's what they're saying.
Hmm. But it does make a little bit more sense. But this is a situation where I'm like, it's just really funny. It's
I
really
like
funny.
how Oliver reacts,
Yeah.
especially because it's like at a moment where he should be in trouble, but he's just like, "Ha, you're invincible now."
Yeah.
Um,
It's very accurate to what a kid would do.
but
Isn't
it was just like even the Muller twins are like, "Oh yeah, it must be Invincible." I'm like, "How? How do you not know who this is?"
Yeah, you're freaking geniuses and all that. I like that moment where it's like nuclear arms don't explode with a drop. It's
Yeah.
like, no, but they hurt if you drop them on my head.
Yes, exactly.
It's
That was
so
some good stuff.
funny. I like it.
Um oh, I guess we should talk about what happens. That's what I want to talk about. The whole uh, what is his name? Why the Seth Rogen character. Why am I blanking on
Oh yeah,
everyone's
that
names
alien
now?
guy. That
Alan. There we go. I
Alan,
was like,
yeah.
it's like a very obvious name, Alan the alien.
Yeah.
Um, I really like in the comics specifically the relationship he forges with Nolan.
Mhm.
So I'm glad it's. I mean, they're doing it sparingly here, but I was really happy to when he was like, "Wait, were you scared I was gonna die?" He's like, "Oh, that's nice. This is perfect. This is exactly what should be happening. We're best friends. This is great."
Yeah, the Seth Rogen character is really, really funny. I like it a lot.
He yeah, I don't want to say anything to ruin stuff for you, but I
Yeah.
really it was one of those things that I was reading and I was part of this like virtual book club with not that I had any say in it. I was reading along and then listening to people discuss
Mhm.
the Heroes Reforged team, and they were just like, "You just got to remember, Alan the alien, great guy. Just don't worry. Whatever you're worried, just remember, Alan the alien, great guy."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah." He like the more I read, the more I was like, "Yeah, great guy. I love this guy," um, and especially the impact he has on Nolan.
Mhm.
For Nolan to have an actual friend as opposed to, you know, a comrade in arms or
Mhm.
uh, a different dynamic in terms of wife and son.
Yep.
It is nice to see. I hope they keep that development going.
I hope so too, largely because I'm just like, yeah, this is why you need a community, generally speaking. You
Hmm.
can't be a lone wolf and all that kind of stuff because it forces you to have more empathy in that regard of like, if you don't
It's
have people directly involved, it's like, what are you doing here? Right? I'm very interested to see how that's going to develop. Can't wait to see what happens to Alan the alien, and largely just because I'm like, I love hearing Seth Rogen's voice, and I think it's just funny.
it's weird because when you first hear him in the first episode post
Mhm.
credits, I was like, is this J.K. Simmons doing a voice? Like, I didn't realize how similar their voice tones can be when they're doing those characters.
Sure.
But I was like, oh, obviously it's Alan the Alien. But just
Mhm.
initially, I was like, oh, that's why is Nolan talking like this? And I was like, oh, it's not Nolan. That's why.
Mhm.
But yeah, I keep remembering what the end of everything is. So just like, I don't want to. I don't want to pull the rug out, but I'm just like, yeah,
Sure.
Alan the Alien, good stuff. Um, and I guess we didn't touch on the Titan stuff that happened, which is he runs this. The Mahershala Ali did not come back this year.
Mhm.
I I don't know what he's doing if he's not doing Blade or this, but I guess he's in the
Mm.
Jurassic World movie. But even
Yep.
that trailer makes it seem like he'll be dead. Don't you worry.
It,
The
it
trailer
very
really makes
much
it seem like,
does.
nah, that guy's dying.
Yeah,
I'm
it
hoping
makes
they're
it
doing
seem
that
like
because
that.
he doesn't die. But like, I'm just like, come on, man, you could lend your voice to this. Everyone's in this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not back. But yeah, his whole thing is obviously we know he took over to put his family in a better position,
Mhm.
and it feels like he's just kind of like, I want to have the least amount of impact as possible,
Yeah.
just enough so that I can keep this lifestyle up.
Yeah.
And he's being called to task to be like, no, 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 you need to help Multipole. And he's
Yeah.
like, I don't really want to bring that kind of heat down on myself. And he's like, nah, you got to do it. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Hmm.
Because that was a character where I feel like, and he got chastised for it, but Mark made the decision to be like, I'm going to help someone. Like, I
Hmm.
think they're bad, but I want to help them. And even though Nolan was like, don't do that, he's just going to screw you over.
Hmm.
And so it'll be interesting to see how they reconnect. And I'm not saying that to be coy. I genuinely don't remember what happens.
Right. 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 Yeah. No, that is going to be interesting. Like, I'm enjoying the fact that I'm like, yes, let's finish off this storyline. Let's see what develops here and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure it's going to be complex. I'm sure it's going to be really, really good. But yeah, like, what is Mahershala Ali doing if it's, right now that didn't allow him to come back and voice that
Maybe it was
character?
just money. Maybe it was like,
Maybe.
because I think he's done 2 episodes, so maybe it's like, yeah,
Sure.
I'm Mahershala Ali, two-time Oscar award winner Mahershala Ali.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'd like to be compensated for my time. And they're
Yeah.
like, no, no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I feel bad. I should look up who voiced him, but that's not gonna happen. So while I'm looking that up, we can acknowledge that Angstrom Levy is alive.
Yeah.
He's he's definitely, and this is, I don't know how he's still alive. If I'm being honest,
Mhm.
I just know that basically, unless it's a Viltrumite, uh, none of the bad guys ever go away. Like they're constantly coming back. I just don't ever remember how. It's
Mhm.
just it's always like, oh, right, that's how they came back. But
Mhm.
it's just basically because the comic really tries to emphasize, like, do you understand how this is literally your whole life is dealing with these bad guys? They
Mhm.
don't just wait their turn to like come at you. Like you might have to deal with 4 of them at once.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's not really one of those like, oh, finally they defeated that guy again, unless it's a Viltrumite. That's kind
Mhm.
of, and you see how hard they are to defeat. So it is kind of gets to that point of like, sure, I guess he's back.
Mhm.
Oh, this guy's back now too.
Yeah.
I don't see him. I don't see who took over listed. I feel really bad. Do you have anything else you want to say? Oh, Todd Williams. That's the guy's name. That's who took
Oh,
over doing Titan's voice.
nice. Nice. No, no, not much more I have to say about this. Very strong start to the season. Love the perspective that they're getting us to lean into about like really figuring out the idea of like, do you want to be good or do you want to be effective? That's paraphrase, obviously, but
Yeah,
very, very much looking forward to what they're going to give us for the remainder of this season and all that kind of stuff and how it all fits together. So I it's just very, very interesting because I'm like, yeah, Mark, you got to change because right now, as far as I'm concerned, you're bringing a lot of fascism into this,
hmm
with being unyielding in your ways and. You got to hear him out. You got to hear Cecil out because it's just yeah, they've got a
the
job to
thing is,
do.
I don't even know if it's Cecil he has to hear out because I
Hmm.
feel like we already know what Cecil's about.
Hmm.
It's more, I'm like, you got to listen to the other people in your life.
Yeah.
You and um more instances of him acting like he did with Titan
Yeah.
in terms of people who aren't directly related to him or he's dating
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
listening to them.
Yeah.
All right, well, again, we're not going to be rating this until the end. This is much like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. We will wait until the
Hmm.
end of the season to rate it. So thank you very much for listening, everybody. You can find us at TDF Spoiled on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, and TikTok. You can email us, spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. We're on all the different podcast platforms. But if not, if you don't find us where you listen to, go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten and find all the different coordinates to get in touch with us and let us know. Or just let us know how you're enjoying the show. Next episode will be Captain America Brave New World.
That's right.
So yeah, we're looking forward to that, and then we will jump back into, I guess it'll just be us finishing off Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
Yep.
Because it'll be done by then.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's what you can look forward to. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.